This podcast provides a platform that will share many different points of views that should empower you, uplift you, make you want to go out and do right. When you hear the term still a man, say, yes, I am. Still a man. Yes, I am. Still a man. Yes, I am. Let's go.
What's up, people? Welcome to another edition of the Still a Man podcast. And we're going to keep it going with the Black History themes. Tonight, we are going to talk about famous slave rebellion leaders. And of course, we have the familiar ones, which are Harriet Tubman and Nat Turner. So we got some videos that we're going to watch. I believe there was a Google article that I asked everybody to check out. So we're just going to take it from there. All right. So we'll go ahead and start it this way. So Timmy, I know you're rather reluctant to talk about Harriet Tubman because we talked about her so much, and you feel like she gets too much spotlight, whereas freedom leaders are concerned due to the school curriculum, be it public or private. She's the main person they talk about during the month of Black History. So again, at the risk of sounding redundant, refresh our memory. What do you know about Harriet Tubman?
Since I learned so much about her, the main thing they talked about her helping the slaves through the Underground Railroad and helping them go up to Canada to I think it was a camp, but then they spread down north. They get up to Canada and they started spreading north, like to New York and Buffalo, all those places. Yeah, but yeah, that's the main thing that they always talk about her, what she's done and how she put her life on the line to help the slave. Even, sometimes at one point at a time, she was helping people and, she almost got caught herself.
Mm-hmm. So she was a very brave individual. So it's been said, so it's been written. Okay. Patsy, what you know about Harriet Tubman?
Basically the same thing. Just say she was going to help to free the slaves and stuff like that. Until I moved to watch the movie on Harriet Tubman, I didn't realize her name, like why it came out as a Minty, her birth name. I forget the whole name, but it was shortened Minty.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't I didn't know the slave name that she had, but yeah, and she was going back and forth from the north back down to help people from the plantations and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Sean, what do you know about Harriet Tubman?
Oh, I know that she was a civil rights advocate. She was a scout for the spy. And I mean, she was a scout spy for the Union. soldiers. She as a matter of fact, next month she would have been 202 years old.
Woo!
What else do I know? She was an advocate for women's suffrages. So she, she was a big advocate for women and whatever rights that they could get accomplished. And yeah, that's pretty much.
Shout out to Sister Harriet Tubman. She would look good in one of our support our sisters t-shirts. She probably
Mhm.
somebody did would be an advocate for that because she's a part of the early. She's like if you say our forefathers, so I guess she'd be our four sisters. She'd be on the front line. The initial push for the women's movement. She, somebody that did great things for the women, and she's like a precursor to the women's movement. Gregory, what do you know about Harriet Tubman? All right. So if you're just tuning in, we are talking about famous slave rebellion leaders. And right now we're talking about Harriet Tubman and Nat Turner. So did anybody else join us? Anybody that wants to jump in the conversation? Remember, this is an open forum. You do not have to raise your hand. You just wait for a break in the conversation and then you just jump in. So, all right. So we're gonna go on. What do you guys know about Nat Turner? So that's like everybody always talks about Harriet Tubman and her work with the Underground Railroad, but we seldom speak of Nat Turner, and that's probably because it's a different approach, different type of rebellion, but it still has the basis of freedom. Patsy, what you know about Nat Turner, aka the Prophet?
Not much because when I think of Nat Turner, I'm thinking of like the singer. But when I was watching the video, Nat, this Nat Turner is totally someone different, right?
Yeah, totally different. This is the slave that led a revolt.
Yeah, so like I don't think many people know of that Nat Turner. When they like me, I when I was watching the video, I just did not know about the slave Nat Turner. And yeah.
No worries. We this platform, I believe in, informing people. So, you're gonna get a wealth of information today about both Harriet and Nat and some others. So you will become empowered. You're gonna get an education today. Again, I made this reference before. In the words of Kevin Hart's uncle, you're gonna learn today, or his daddy, one of the two. Timmy, what do you know about Nat Turner? Timmy, what do you know about Nat Turner? Okay, guys, you gotta unmute your phone so you can be a part of the discussion. Sean, what do you know about Nat Turner?
I had always heard about Nat Turner when I was young, but didn't know anything about him or what he stood for until I was in my, I want to say, mid-20s. And he was what I would like to call the early the early settlement of the Black Panthers, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
He was part of a militia. They were a mob that just went around and actually, attacked and killed, white people. I mean, on the record is indicated that I want to say they killed between 55 to 70 white people, but altogether it was maybe like 120. And he got his name is significant because he is got the blame for it all, although it wasn't all him, just him, I should say. And so he became famous because I guess he was like one of the younger, more radical ones of the group, the outspoken ones. So that's why he was considered the name of the militia mob. But he was also, I mean, he was caught and he was killed. And he was hanged for his punishment. As punishment.
Okay, so a lot of times people like Nat Turner, the reason why, so the differences and the similarities between him and let me see, Harriet Tubman, they're not that great. It's not that it's not a big like gap in between the two. So basically, earlier I said the foundation of most of these movements was freedom. So you have the oppressed, they want to be set free. So most of the the enslaved, they often pray to God for freedom. And that's because the majority of them, that's all they have. So that's what they turn to. When enslaved, you know that you can't get man to take you out that situation, then you call upon God to do so. So, and there's the similarities with Nat and Harriet Tubman. So, as a young person, Harriet Tubman got struck in the head with a weight by one of the white overseers because he was trying to basically stop one of the other slaves that was fleeing. And he threw the weight and it hit Harriet Tubman in the head. So after that, Harriet started to see visions, and she contributed that to not to the injury suffered from the blow to the head. She felt that God was talking to her. Now, here's the similarity with Nat. Nat believed that he too was receiving visions and messages from God. And God told each of these individuals to do certain things to help free their people. Now, Harriet, she first set out to escape slavery. She first attempted to do so with her brother Henry and Ben. They escaped, but rumor is one of the brothers was a new father or something, so they convinced Harriet to return with them. I don't know if it mentions it in the video that we're going to watch what befell them once they returned, but all three of them returned together. Later, Harriet set out to escape again, and this time she was more successful and she went without her brothers. But if you know the legend of Harriet Tubman, she made several returns once she was free to help free her family members that were still enslaved. Now, Nat had a different approach because Nat, well, here's another similarity. Nat too escaped and then returned because he said that he received a message from God, a vision that told him to return to his oppressors and be a dutiful slave, so to speak. But many think that was a ploy. That was something that Nat just told his enslavers, his overseers, the slave owners. That was the beginning of his plot to get others to take up arms and join him with their plight for freedom. So Harriet, she got the slaves together and they took route on what is now known as the Underground Railroad. Nat decided that he was going to lead a path of destruction in his wake, but Nat too had an endpoint. A lot of times he gets a bad name because they just thought he set out just to kill a bunch of white slave owners and their family members. That just wasn't the case. He felt like they wasn't going to give them their freedom, so they had to do so by using force. The only thing that he believed that they would listen to at that point, because it was beyond reasoning, was the violence that they gave
now,
to the
Dave,
slaves.
now that goes to Malcolm X, where he said about Martin Luther King and them that they was doing the civilized approach, and they beating them, spraying them, and what they had to do was, fight violence with violence. That's what by any means necessary.
Mm-hmm. So you get so am I correct in saying you believe that Nat Turner was basically the blueprint for the Malcolm X's approach towards freedom and civil rights?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. Gregory, are you back with us?
Mm-mm.
I never left. You never let me finish what I was saying about Harry.
I think you would. All right. So let me say this so we don't have a repeat performance. You guys, you have to turn your mics off and on because a lot of times you guys are talking and your mics are on mute. So we didn't hear anything that you said. We waited for
I
you.
said I know about Harriet Tubman, what you taught me in school, but come to find out later on in life, she might just be a fictional character to cover up a great intelligence that we had before they came on boats.
Yeah, so
An underground railroad system that we really already had. So when they talk about the Underground Railroad, it's a real system that was covered up before they started putting trains on these tracks that we built, and they didn't know how to use these hand pump trains that we already had here. We gotta go look into it.
All right,
Many
so
sites.
like everyone else, beforehand, I implored everybody to do some research beforehand so we can discuss this matter intelligently. So if you have any references, you want to refer people, this
Yeah, go to YouTube and type in the Underground Railroad mud flood.
Okay, so if you've already done so, please enlighten us as to what you found. And I do believe we do have someone else online, but they're not speaking. I believe that's Robert.
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
So Robert, would you like a chance to answer the previous questions, both on Harriet Tubman and Nat Turner? What do you know about Harriet Tubman? And then just as a follow-up, what do you know about Nat Turner?
Turn your mic on.
It might be something wrong with his mic.
Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. Gregory, let's go to the first video. How many videos we got tonight?
2.
We got 2 videos. All right, Let's hit him with Harriet Tubman first.
Harriet Tubman, celebrating Black history. Beginning with fact number 1, the actual date of Harriet Tubman's birth is unknown. It is estimated that she was born between 1820 and 1823, but no one really knows because records on slaves' births were not kept at that time. Although she is commonly known as Harriet Tubman in history, that was not her name at birth. Looking at fact number 2, her birth name was Araminta Ross. She was nicknamed Minty by her mother. Looking at fact number 3, at an early age, Araminta experienced head trauma. This is where when another slave was trying to escape, an overseer who was trying to stop the slave threw a heavy weight at that slave, accidentally hitting Araminta in the head, cracking her skull. With fact number 4, because of the head injury, this affected her sleep. Araminta suffered from sleeping spells where she would suddenly fall asleep and it was hard to wake her up. Looking at fact number 5, in 1849, Araminta escaped to freedom. She ran away with her 2 brothers who eventually returned to their plantation, but Araminta continued on to Pennsylvania, which was a free state, and there she changed her name from Araminta to Harriet. With fact number 6, Tubman worked as an abolitionist. During that time, people who were abolitionists worked to free slaves, and there she became known for working with the Underground Railroad, which was a network of abolitionists who used secret routes and allowed their homes to be used as safe houses to help slaves move to free states. When looking at her work with the Underground Railroad and fact number 7, in 10 years she guided her parents, siblings, relatives, and friends. Some were also guided by her and others following her instructions. With our next fact, Tubman served as a scout and a spy in the Civil War. During her time in the Union, she was employed as a nurse, but worked as a scout and a spy to gather information for the Union Army. Up next, working with the Union Army helped free a ton of slaves. For example, Tubman helped Union Colonel James Montgomery during a raid in South Carolina where they ended up freeing over 700 slaves. With our 10th and final fact, after the Civil War ended, Harriet Tubman spent the remainder of her life helping those in need until her life came to an end on March 10th, 1913.
Okay, so as promised, everybody else, hold your comments. We're gonna go to Robert first. Robert, so this is like redundant at this point, but now that you watched the video, I'm gonna ask you again though, what do you know about Harriet Tubman? Well, let's just say, did you know what you just learned in the video about Harriet Tubman, or is this the first time you're acquiring this knowledge about Harriet Tubman from the video?
Could you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I pretty much knew basically what Timmy was talking earlier, what Patsy had said earlier, learned a little bit about what Sean enlightened me on. And then what I didn't know was bits of what they were saying in the video about her nickname, her real name. Sean alluded to she was a spy. Those are things I just found out. But everything else, the Underground Railroad, helping with the slaves and all of that, I knew about all of that.
Okay, so just to be fair, I asked everybody else early on about what knowledge did they have about Nat Turner? What do you know about Nat Turner?
I really didn't pay too much to his story, other than I heard that he basically was the opposite of her work.
Okay, so we'll learn more about Nat when we watch his video. But let's go back to Harriet Tubman. So Patsy, now you know her name, her real name.
Yeah, because like when I watched the video earlier before the show, That's why I said I couldn't remember what they said in the video, Aramita.
Mhm.
But but I
Had
know
the,
the
the
movie
Minty
they
right.
called Minty.
Yeah, you
Mhm.
had that right for sure.
Yeah, so Minty I knew from watching the movie that came out a few years ago, Harriet.
Yeah, it's probably a whole lot easier to pronounce than her name as well. Her
Yeah,
initial.
right.
Um.
But even at that, I didn't know Aramita.
Mhm. Um. So Timmy, so let me ask you guys this question. So was it just me, or did you guys? How did you feel about when they said the overseer accidentally hit her with the weight when he was trying to stop the escape of another slave? How do you
Um,
accidentally hit
because
somebody?
you have no control over the weight when you throwing it. And if you
Yes.
dropping it, you definitely don't have no control over it.
So that would be the common answer, but when I'm thinking a little bit more into it, they had no regard for the slaves to begin with. So I don't think it was accidental because you don't pick up a weight and throw it at anybody and think that okay, this is not going to harm them. So even if he didn't intend to hit Harriet, he intended to do some harm with the weight when he threw it at the fleeing slave. So I don't think that
Yes,
was an accident. Does anybody
yes.
else feel that way?
Um, I feel like it wasn't because if it I feel it's an accident if your intentions, if it's been told to us that his intentions was to hit a fleeing slave. Now, whether he hit anybody else,
Mm-hmm.
No.
I see what you're trying to say or what you're saying, not what you're trying to say, what you're
Mm-hmm.
saying. But if we're keeping it in its context and it
Mm-hmm.
presented to us that his intentions were to hit a particular slave, but didn't care if he hit another slave,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, it's an accident because his intentions was one thing.
Okay. So the reason why I said so because that behavior was indicative of what we know the overseers to be violent. You know, uh, trying to keep them in line. So to instill fear by using the most violent means. So in this particular situation, where they said that he threw the weight at the fleeing slave and he accidentally hit her, I just, I question if it his intentions, because I just don't. It just for me that just doesn't rest on well because then it
Let, let,
says
let,
that it cracked her skull open.
let me give you this scenario then.
Yeah.
And this is how I would look at it. I'm just opposing it to you. What's the
Mhm.
difference between somebody doing a drive-by? You have an intention on hitting one particular person, but whoever's out there, you're gonna hit them. You're gonna hit them.
But
Sure enough.
see, my mindset is the same. When you pull out that gun, your intentions is to do harm. So you know that there's a chance that others may be hurt. So I just feel like there was ill intent to begin with when he picked up the weight. Just like
And
if
I
once you pull out the gun, you have ill intent. So
now,
that's my thing. That's what I'm saying. I don't believe it was accidental because you set out to do harm. You may not intended to hit her, but you meant to do some harm with that weight.
okay, and I'm glad you said that. He did mean to do some harm with that weight, but his intentions to do harm was caused by an action by someone who was doing wrong.
Well, yeah, according to their law at that time,
Yeah.
because they said he was attempting to escape.
Yeah, that's wrong. I mean, it's the law at that time. We may not like it, but it's the law. Is wrong,
Well,
and
yeah, that's
it
yeah. Like I'm gonna stand. I know what you're saying, but I'm gonna stand on what I said. It was wrong because that was the law. But that law was created by people whose intentions was wrong to begin with. That was their
Yeah.
intention to keep them enslaved. So again, by any means necessary. So that means if I got to crack a few eggs, few heads, then I'm okay with that. So that's where this is coming from with me, just based upon of what I've seen, watched videos and read. The overseers were harsh. They didn't have a peaceful approach. That it seems like that was most of their approach to begin with, to be violent, to do harm.
No, I think their approach was to keep the slaves in line. That's what they was hired to do.
Right.
And if they needed to keep them in line, and if whooping their A was keeping them in line, that's what they was told to do.
Okay.
It's the equivalent of it. Yeah, it can be in their heart and this, that, and the other, but at the end of the day, that was their job. That was their responsibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So would we equate the overseer to a CO?
Basically.
Say that again. I missed that.
Would you compare an overseer to a CO? So the overseer of the plantation, the CO of the prison.
That's where it all
That's
comes
what
from.
it is. That's what it is.
That's what the police was derived from.
Mm.
Yep.
That's where it all comes from. That.
Okay. So you guys gotta remember. So wrong or right, these individuals they was oppressed, so they felt like that no one was not going to treat them right. They was because it was a law that told them they could behave as such. That was their property. They can do with them as they chose to do. So they felt like the only way to get so there's a saying, give me liberty or give me death or something like that. I believe that's how it is. So they felt like the only way they would be liberated if they brought about their own liberation. They couldn't wait for the very individuals that oppressed them, enslaved them, and that was mistreating them to show them some type of empathy or show humanity.
Well, you got to realize that's why they fought the North and the South, because the South, even though that Lincoln had supposedly freed the slaves, right? The South said we're not followed by those people up north rules. We're going by our rules, and this is how it's going to be. So that's why the North and South got into it, because they refused to relinquish the slaves and give up control of them.
Mm-hmm. But in each case, the North and the South had their own agenda, because let's just be clear about this. Slavery was not devised because we wanted to provide a better way of life for those that we enslaved. Are we clear on that?
Of course.
Wait, say that again.
Slavery was not created so that we may provide a better way of life for those that we enslaved.
Slavery was not
not created so that we can give the slaves a better way of life.
Oh no. Slavery was created for they were hired slaves. They were hired what do you call what is that word I'm looking for, Gregory?
Indentured
yeah,
slaves,
there you go. That's the word I'm looking for.
Indentured slaves are different from. So let's be clear about this. So
because they somewhat got a little bit of freedom, leeway, like the house nigga had free range, but they didn't have that much free range, but they had free range, more than the slaves that was in the field, because whether you was the maid, the cook, or the butler, the driver, you got treated better. You got to eat the food that they ate in the damn house, but you couldn't eat along with all of them ate together in their lower quarters and whatnot. But they had to make sure that the master and his guests were taken care.
Yeah, you wasn't consuming no meals until after everybody in the house was fed. The master's
Yeah,
family was
that's what
fed.
I was just thinking it was gonna say too. That you ate after everybody else done ate in the, you know, the master and his family and friends.
These jobs that they had wasn't jobs they filled out an application for. It was
No.
it was what it was for the betterment of the owner, the slave owner,
Exactly.
not the slave. So
now check this out. Check this out. From them, those jobs like that, going to getting little to nothing to what they make now, doing those jobs.
they make a whole lot more money right now.
A whole lot more
Well,
now than they did back then.
because again, when these jobs came about for the people of color, for the enslaved, that was for the betterment of the slave owners' life. It was they was product. They was stock, livestock. So that wasn't they again. It was like if you get hurt, there's another one to take your place. So that's why again it goes back to what I was speaking about earlier with the overseer. Go ahead.
I would have to disagree with that because that's one thing that now they whip their slaves and this and that and the other to keep them in line, this and that and the other. Now to like hurt them to where they didn't really care what happened to them. I don't think all of them was like that because that's money.
Wait. Guys,
Exactly.
let me stop you right there. Let me be clear with y'all about this. Now, when I say overseer, y'all know there's different, levels to this. The master, the plantation owner is different from the overseer. So I don't think the overseer had the same regard for, for the slave as the owner did.
Oh yes, sir.
Oh,
because if that person gets hurt, he can't make no money. The owner is going to be mad at the CO because he done let the person get hurt, and now he got to pay money to make sure. Because when you're valuable to them, you're valuable to them.
Okay.
Again, because
so let me stop you.
The overseer's job was his primary job was to keep them in line, not to completely go out and on his own kill them. He had to have permission to kill them.
Exactly.
Slaves. Or he had to have permission to hurt them, to maim them to where they weren't functional for a period of time as well. He had to have. He couldn't do that on his own.
Okay, so that brings me to this question. What do you think befell the
I believe the same with the
overseer
that
injured Harriet?
I believe it was what the history book said, what it was told to us, that he drew that weight. And it happens to be that when that guy broke out, he just happened to be in the vicinity of Harriet Tubman and whatever other person that was standing around.
But I'm saying
it could have been anybody that
I understand that. I know y'all talking about intentions. I'm talking about what do you think was the consequences for the overseer? Because remember, he's an employee of the plantation owner, the master.
Depending on what Harriet's job was and if she couldn't function it, he may have gotten spoken to. We don't know. But we can just speculate. I don't know what her role in that camp was.
Now, y'all remember too, the overseers a lot of times wasn't well-to-do, well-off neither. They were like poor, white people that lived in.
Some of the overseers were other black slaves.
Yeah, that too. Right. That too.
So it's not even known. We don't even know if that was a fellow black person that did that.
That is true. That is true. Now, but I will say this. If that was a black overseer, I do not believe his consequences would be the same as a white overseer. I don't think that it would have been met the same way.
I don't know.
Has anybody ever heard the theory that I said though?
What?
What
That
theory?
she might be a fictional character and that we had like this ancient technology they don't want people to know about. The indigenous black people that was already here.
Okay, so you know what? Let's get Robbie back into this conversation too. So they said that the visions that Harriet started having came about after the cracking of her skull.
Yes.
And
yes,
she contributed that to she said that was it was godly. That's where the visions came from. So Robbie, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like these visions that she later started to have was going to take place with or without the cracking of her skull?
If you're the chosen, yeah, it probably was going to happen with or without the cracking of her skull. This to touch back to you guys saying what was some of her chores. She was chopping and chucking wood.
Oh,
So
damn.
she might have been doing that at the time. I don't know for certain, but that's what she was doing in her camp.
Yeah, Harry had a different job because if I'm not mistaken, her mother was a slave of the house, the
Yeah.
big house, and her dad was chopping wood, so he was, I don't know, maybe he was a field hand as well. And again, you guys gotta remember too, it depends on what was Harriet's complexion, because that's where the color game comes in too.
They never, all they showed you in the book was a drawing. You, they never showed you an actual picture of her. It was always drawing of her.
All right, let's talk.
I have a little clip, Uncle D, if y'all want to indulge in or humor me about the topic that I was saying.
All right, so hold on. Let's hold on to that. We'll get. I promise we'll go back to that. We want to make sure we give Harriet and Nat their just due. So again, let's talk more about Harriet and what she did. Now, you know, they said she came back and she helped free her family, her parents, and family members and friends. Now, you know, sounds like to me, Harriet was a selfless individual because she came back. Once she found freedom, she could have kept it moving, but she came back.
Exactly. And that was the one thing I could say and with her and the other ones before her and that was there during all that, they knew what they were going through wasn't right, and so they wasn't being selfish. They was like, we're going to go and help as many people we can, so they can, reap the benefits like us on this side is doing, where they don't have to worry about being told what to do, being told to go out and chop down. They can provide for themselves. You know,
Let me ask you guys this question. So everybody at the age you are right now, you feel like you know yourself very well. True or false?
yes.
true.
Yeah.
Sean?
I believe I know myself.
Gregory?
Yes, sir.
Robert?
No, he's on the pause.
Robert?
Sorry, I know myself.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask you guys this. So can do you guys all believe that Harriet was a selfless individual?
Oh, definitely.
What you
Because,
say,
like you said,
Selfless.
Yeah, because to go back and free, the remaining loved ones, she was probably raised decent to care, have the love, and it would have been on her mind or in her heart if she would have just freed herself and never looked back? How could she live with herself knowing that her moms and them were still there and was going to be brutally punished or slaved?
All right, so I asked y'all that because I'm going to brings me to this next. So, Robbie, do you think that you would have went back for others once you sought freedom, once you realized freedom?
Let me tell you something. Because I love my family, I would have tried to form a smart team, and we would have went in there and did what we had to do. If we would have died on our journey trying to free you guys, that's what would have happened. But at least I know we probably all would have died together. I wouldn't want to be alone out in the better part of the world. I need my family and friends by me.
Okay. Patsy?
Yeah, I think I would have went back. And I think she was really selfless too, because she could have got killed going back repeatedly.
Not to
You know, she
mention.
could have lost her life today.
Go ahead, Patsy, finish.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and then to like go back and forth and like whoever she got to bring back out to freedom to the on the Underground Railroad and bring back to get them to be free and stuff. You know, she could have been killed at any given time. They could have caught up with her for whatever, you know.
She was what's the name? They wanted her. They wanted her. She was
Of course they wanted
America's
her.
most wanted, to so to speak, at that point, at that time. They really wanted to catch her.
But they wasn't gonna cross. They wasn't gonna cross into the north. Yes. Now here's the thing. Like you said, she definitely was selfless because after she rescued her family and friends of the family, she could have just said, "That's it." But she went back to get strangers, people that she didn't know, people that were the same color as she was. You know.
So again, I'm gonna ask you the same thing I asked everybody else, Timmy. Would you have went back?
Oh, definitely. If that's your cause to go, if you free, then your duty is to help others be free.
Okay.
It's just like with someone said, each one teach one. You know, one teach one, and then the others teach another. So that's what it is. You passing it down to make sure that people are safe and people are getting the same type of freedom that you are getting. That's it.
Okay.
I'm gonna say this. I don't want to take anything away from what we learned or what we know of Harriet Tubman when I say this, but each mission that she went back to free the slaves, the enslaved slaves, she went back on a mission not solely to go get them. Remember, during this time, she was a spy in the Union Army.
Yeah, that was.
And so each mission that she went on, she encountered individuals, and if they were willing to go, she brought them through the Underground Railroad, through the traveling through what we know as the Underground Railroad. That's how that could, because her initial, when she first left and got a lot of her family out, the one time that supposedly, according to what it was said, she would cause this mission to be continuous, other than her being the spy and going back doing work for them, was she went back on the mission to get one of her nieces who was scheduled to be auctioned off in 30 days. And that's how it all got started.
So with the Union soldiers. Because they also said she led a revolt. She led them the charges.
Because they heard what she was doing, because she didn't start off as a spy. She started off as a nurse.
Yeah. A nurse and a cook.
a nurse and a cook, and when they heard that this is what she was doing, that's how they started using her as a spy. But in the process of her using that spy, she never went back. She only, like, initially she went back for family members, but each time that she went back and people have heard that she was coming, it was word given ahead of time and said, hey, this is where I would be. Those who were willing to go, let's go.
You know this was a woman of God, like they said, and they said that she was well versed with the Bible and stuff like that. Although she could not read, she had a lot of teachings. Like people would teach her the Bible verbally and stuff like that. So you know she even spoke out against this is what I read in my research, against white preachers, because she said that they was a part of the problem with the oppressed slave, feeling like that the only thing that they could do for themselves to bring about some type of liberty was to pray. So she felt like at some point they had to do more than just pray. So one of them situations where some people subscribe to God helps those that helps themselves. I think that they might have switched up that in translation a bit. All right, we know a lot about Harriet. Gregory, can we see the video on Nat Turner?
I don't think it's just Nat Turner. It's 10 Rebellion.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Let's see that video.
But there's people we don't know about.
What we're about to learn about is other rebellions. And
sure you don't want me to show my clip on Harriet before we move on?
Oh, okay. Show that one, and then we'll go into the other one. So show that one, and then everybody hold your comments, and then we're gonna go right to the other video right after that.
Harriet's behalf was done so on the date of May 7th, 1895. As the affidavit that was filed in order to give particular people permission to write and speak on Harriet's behalf was done so on the date of May 7th, 1895, which was well after the previous affidavits between the years of 1890 and 1894 were already on file. But this particular affidavit seemed as if Harriet Tubman wrote it herself, due to her stating, quote, "My affidavit of June 16, 1894 and November 10, 1894 were both written in my presence." But then the paragraph underneath it states, "The above testimony was all written in my presence," instead of saying, "My testimony was all written in my presence." What is very important to note here is that she only mentioned 3 affidavits being done in her presence, the 2 in 1894 and this one in 1895, with no mention of the previous affidavits. And here's the problem with that. The previous affidavits that were allegedly filed by Harriet Tubman herself has the exact same handwriting as all of the other affidavits, and yet there was no mention of Harriet Tubman being illiterate in any of these documents that she allegedly wrote. In fact, her signature that was done in cursive writing is also identical of that same handwriting. And if you take an even closer look, you'll notice that each of her signatures are all marked by an X, while being accompanied by 2 other signatures of 2 separate witnesses. It's
a little bit more than that, and it starts talking about Tartaria and stuff.
Okay.
No, I'm saying that was the end of the video. I don't know how anybody feels about that.
We're waiting for the other video to play, and then we're going to talk about both of them.
Throughout the history of slavery, revolts have usually been brutally crushed in order to set an example for others. Despite that, uprisings have been a regular part of slave societies for as long as one can remember, going back as far as ancient Rome and Persia. Number 10, Stono Rebellion. The Stono Rebellion of 1739 was the largest slave revolt in the southern colonies, an association of British-controlled territories in North America at the time. Beginning on September the 9th, 1739, it involved a number of slaves working on the plantations near the Stono River in South Carolina. They were possibly aiming to march towards Spanish St. Augustine, where Spain was offering freedom and property to all fugitive slaves from the British territories. It was a violent uprising, as the rebels killed everyone on their way except one innkeeper. It didn't last long, though, as the rebellion was put down by white militias and plantation owners on horseback within a few hours. Up to 100 mutineers were killed by the end of it, along with more than 20 white residents killed during the march. Number 9, Gege Rebellion. By the beginning of the 19th century, slavery was a big part of the economy of the Cape Colony, a rapidly developing region in South Africa under British rule. While some resistance had always existed among the enslaved population, the uprising in 1808, also called the Gege Rebellion, came as one of the first organized slave revolts in the colony. It involved around 340 slaves, mainly from the fertile and productive grain farms of Swartland and Coburg. The effort was largely non-violent, as the bands overtook a number of farms, imprisoned the slave-owning families, and freed the slaves. They aimed to march on Cape Town and, in their own words, hoist the bloody flag and fight themselves free. While they were successful for a while, the rebellion didn't last. It was put down within 36 hours, with all of its main leaders sentenced to death or imprisoned. It failed to achieve its larger goals, though the 1808 uprising worked to strengthen revolutionary voices across Cape Colony, eventually leading to the complete abolition of slavery in the 1830s. Number 8, Amistad Mutiny. The Amistad Mutiny of 1939 took place on a ship of the same name, traveling from Havana to Puerto Principe, Cuba. It was carrying 53 people recently kidnapped and sold into slavery, most of whom took part in the mutiny. Almost the entire crew of the ship was killed in the revolt, save for a few people required for the journey back home, like the navigator. Instead of sailing towards Africa like the rebels demanded, however, the Spanish navigator kept moving the ship northwards, ending up in New London, Connecticut, where the rebels were imprisoned. While Spain demanded that the slaves be returned to their rightful owners, the case wasn't so clear-cut in the United States, where the debate around abolition was just heating up. In a highly publicized Supreme Court ruling, it was decided that the defendants were illegally kidnapped and exercised their right to escape captivity. All of the 35 surviving captives were freed and transported back home to Sierra Leone, thanks to donations by local abolitionists and other private organizations. Number 7, Gabriel's Conspiracy. Gabriel's Conspiracy was a rather ambitious slave rebellion planned across the state of Virginia around the turn of the 19th century. If successful, it would have been the largest slave revolt in U.S. history, likely resulting in the freedom of hundreds of slaves across one of the largest slave-holding states at the time. Organized by Gabriel, an enslaved blacksmith working in and around Richmond, the plan involved slaves from at least 11 counties across Virginia, including Norfolk, Charlottesville, Caroline, and Louisa. According to the plan, on August 30th, 1800, Gabriel's army would move to overtake Capitol Square in Richmond, raid the armory, and kidnap the governor, along with parallel uprisings in Petersburg and Norfolk. It was a good plan, and would have likely worked too, if not for a huge thunderstorm that hit the city right on the day of the insurrection. As the rising water level made some of the planned routes impassable, they decided to postpone to the next day. Before they could carry it out, though, 2 slaves in different places got nervous and told their masters about the whole thing. While they were eventually freed, the information resulted in a statewide chase for the insurgents. By the end of it, 26 people, including Gabriel, were hanged for participating in the conspiracy. Number 6, Zanj Rebellion. The Zanj Rebellion is often described as one of the most violent and drawn-out insurgencies of the early years of the Islamic era. For 15 years, beginning in 869, armies of the Abbasid Caliphate fought a bitter battle against East African slaves, also called Zanj, from the marshlands of southern Iraq and southern Iran. Led by a man of mysterious origins, Ali ibn Muhammad, the rebel force successfully repelled the caliph's armies for many years, even establishing a polity of their own deep in the marshes called al-Muqtara. While precise numbers are unknown, thousands of rebels took part in the years-long civil war, which had a devastating impact on the economy in and around the Basra region. Thousands of people lost their houses and livelihoods as the rebels systematically destroyed the farmland owned by the landowners. Even major cities like Basra and Wasit were pillaged at one point, forcing much of the population to flee. The rebels were ultimately defeated, though it came at a heavy price for the caliph. The destruction caused by the Zanj rebels gave rise to several regional dynasties, severely weakening the Abbasid Caliphate's influence across the region and limiting its power to just its capital. Number 5, Nat Turner's Rebellion. The Southampton insurrection, also called Nat Turner's Rebellion after its leader, began on the evening of August the 21st, 1831. It was one of the most audacious slave revolts in US history, as well as one of the most violent. Over the span of a single day, Turner and his close to 50 followers went around Southampton County and killed at least 55 people. They hoped to march towards the closest town, Jerusalem, where they could procure arms and men to continue the revolt. Due to the lack of organization and planning on the part of the rebels, the uprising was quickly put down by local militias. Over 3 dozen rebels were killed as punishment, though Nat Turner himself evaded arrest for 2 months. The rebellion resulted in even stricter laws for the enslaved population in Virginia, vastly limiting their education and movement until the American Civil War. Number 4. Gaspar Yanga's Revolt. In 1570, an African slave named Gaspar Yanga led hundreds of enslaved Africans in east-central Mexico, then called New Spain, into revolt. After killing 23 people, the band made their way to the foothills of the Veracruz Mountains, where they established a small town, or palenque, to live on their own. The experiment worked too, at least for a while. For about 30 years, the colony waged guerrilla warfare against Spanish forces and raided Spanish caravans, along with growing their own food and living sustainably off the earth. Over time, anyone from the vast colony spread across the Veracruz region was referred to as a Yanguico. Despite their military superiority, Spain was never able to defeat their ex-slaves. The conflict ended with a peace treaty, with Yanga establishing the first colony of free slaves in North America. Number 3. German Coast Uprising. The 1811 uprising in what is now Louisiana was easily the largest slave revolt in US history. Beginning on January the 8th, on one of the plantations on the German coast, a region along the west bank of the Mississippi River primarily settled by German immigrants, the uprising would soon involve more than 500 enslaved people marching on New Orleans. Unfortunately for them, the rebels hardly had the training to continue a sustained rebellion. They were barely armed too, especially compared to the well-armed militias hired by plantation owners and forces of the federal government in New Orleans. The rebellion was put down by the morning of January the 10th, and many of the slaves were killed during the fighting or summarily executed soon after. To make an example and discourage other similar attempts, the authorities beheaded many of the bodies and placed their heads on poles across New Orleans and along the Mississippi River. Number 2. Baptist War. Also known as the Christmas Rebellion, the Baptist War was the largest slave rebellion in the British Caribbean. While the numbers are disputed, anywhere between 20,000 to 300,000 slaves from the colony of Jamaica took part in the uprising, beginning on December 25th, 1831. For about 11 days, the rebellion was eventually put down by British counterinsurgency forces and local militias. About 200 rebels were killed during the fighting, along with more than 340 Bill of 1933. Number 1. Haitian Revolution. The Revolution of Haiti remains the only slave revolt in history that succeeded in forming a state of its own. Known as the Saint-Domingue under French rule, it was easily one of the most lucrative colonies in the world at that time, accounting for nearly 2/3 of all overseas trade in France. Beginning with an organized slave revolt in August 1791, the revolution would take another 12 years to fully materialize, ultimately resulting in the establishment of the independent Republic of Haiti. While the conflict was restricted to Haiti, it involved multiple other actors looking out for their own interests in the region, including Spain and England. Even by the most conservative estimates, more than 350,000 people lost their lives in the bitter conflict between France and temporary alliances of other colonial powers with Haitian slaves. By the turn of the century, many parts of Saint-Domingue were under the control of ex-slaves. While Napoleon Bonaparte made a last-ditch attempt to retake the colony by sending an invasion force, he was defeated by rebel leaders like Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who'd go on to become the first ruler of the new rights to all of its citizens.
So let's talk about it. Let's first, I don't know what happened with the ending of that video. Like,
Started sounding robotic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounded like he was in the Matrix.
Having Wi-Fi problems or something.
All right, so that's neither here or there. Let's talk about the interesting parts. Let's first go to the first video about
Could I say this about Harriet?
That's what we're
That's
going
what
to
we're
talk
going to talk about. Do you think she was playing on the people? They don't need to know everything, that she knew how to read and write?
Yeah, so what Robert is referring to, so people are going to go back and look at this later on, and there may or may not be a video to refer to. So Robbie is talking about the legitimacy of the claim that Harriet could not read or write. And then in the video was talking about the legitimacy of these affidavits based upon signatures and stuff like that. Okay, so here's my stance on this. It seems like every time someone sets out to do something good, there is an individual or group of individuals that try to besmirch their name or try to somehow diminish their accomplishments. So I don't know how much relevance the affidavits have. I don't think that it can take away what she did. You know, if the affidavits history says she did this and she did that. If there's something to saying otherwise, then you know, I feel like people of color, you have so very little to like reflect on, like good things that happen to people of color in history. I feel like that sometimes we need to like just ignore some of the stuff that comes up afterwards, because I don't think it does anything to like empower the people. I think that kind of in some situations, if you allow it, it would diminish the spirits of people, the fighting spirit.
Yeah.
But Robbie, what's your take on that?
On what they said about there was previous ones.
Yeah.
Me personally, back in that time, if you wasn't supposed to learn to read and write and you did, you might want to have kept it to yourself and not let them know, because I mean, I guess they was beating you. You wasn't supposed to learn how to read and write because you were trying to better yourself, and it seemed like you're being nosy, you're on their level or something. So maybe she did knew how to read and write and she just act like she didn't.
Okay. Patsy?
How bad could that be though? That's that don't seem like it's taken away from her. It just she just choose not to let you. Hey, believe I'm dumb.
Patsy, how you feel about the question about the affidavits, the legitimacy of the of those affidavits? So let me be clear about this. So someone correct me if I'm wrong. Was the affidavit supposed to speak about her accomplishments, or was it supposed to dispute the time frame in which these acts
The affidavits was about her not being a real person, and the person that supposedly wrote her autobiography, her own biography, excuse me, person that wrote her biography is the person that created the character.
Okay, so let's stand right there. Patsy, how you feel about that?
Like the affidavits itself, something like that I wouldn't take too much with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so much more to Harriet Tubman, and this is regardless whether or not she knew how to read and write. Like we were saying, Robert was saying that she kept that to herself if she did know, because A, she could have been beaten, and B, she could have been killed.
That's right. It was very dangerous.
Back at that time, her life was on the line if she let the owners know, the overseers know, or whoever else was helping out to run that plantation. If anybody knew that, whether it was like their plantation owners or someone, one of their neighbors, they knew. Oh, they were coming back to her owners to say, man, there's something, that woman knows how to read.
And not to mention the fellow enslaved, those that thought that they can receive some type of opportunity to
Exactly.
Brown nose.
to not only brown nose but get a step up on her or get
I
some
have one
reward.
thing to say about this affidavit.
Hi, Tanya.
Hi.
Welcome, Tanya.
I was listening, but I have to say something about this.
The spirit moved you, huh?
They saying that Harriet Tubman is responsible for freeing up to 700 slaves. Yep. Who is to say that this affidavit isn't a smear to try to take away what she accomplished against the slave owners of African American woman, to say that she's a fictional character, she's not real? That's crazy. Somebody helped them slaves get free.
They said the slaves. Yeah. Now let's be clear about this. That article, there's more to that, because there's an article that says that both her and Nat Turner were fictional characters. That's what the article says. There's a Google article that says that Nat Turner and Harriet Tubman were fictional characters. Were said
those are conspiracy theories.
Again, I think that every time we have
the Harriet one I've seen, but Nat Turner I've never seen.
Don't take my
he's
word
always
for
been
it.
a real person.
Don't take my word for it. Go and look it up. It's either on Google or YouTube where it says both Harriet Tubman and Nat Turner were said to be fictional characters. And this is, I'm going to say this again. I feel like every time we have Black leaders or something, they find some way to besmirch them or belittle or diminish what they mean to us.
See, that's why I say, like, with something like that, I take with a grain of salt, because it's not to say that I believe everything, like, disbelieve everything, but certain things, like, that bring somebody else down, I take with a grain of salt.
Okay. Sean, how you feel about that? Jump in there. How you feel about these, about two-part, them saying that she may or may not be a fictional character, and that these affidavits were not legitimate?
Her being a fictional character, I think is hogwash. And in the affidavits, that too, like I said, the way Tanya chimed in, she said it perfectly. Like, it's just trying to smear whatever it is that we have reverence towards her or give her credit for. And that's how I look at that.
And you got to remember.
Hold on. Sean, was you finished?
Yeah, I was.
All right, go ahead, Timmy.
And you got to remember, they always gonna find a pick-me Negro to try to downplay. We put you in position, and this is what we want you to do. We want you to downplay and destroy this guy or this woman that the people feel like they are someone that's going to lead them to the promised land and stuff like that. So I believe that that's what it is. They always trying to find something to discredit and diminish the name of people. And it's sad because it be your own people that be doing that.
Yeah, and because we're all about association. We take things as we take things for face value for the gospel when it's one of our own that's speaking it. And let alone if you say it loud enough and long enough and you got enough people to start singing the chorus, then people are more likely to believe it. So it could be a smear conspiracy campaign, a smear campaign. But again, this is what happens to our Black leaders and heroes often. See, this is just another version of the whitewashing of Black history. This is why, again, it makes you question what value our Black history has. Because they're telling you, even the stuff that you was taught in school, there was a part of curriculum, and there was a part of American history. Because remember, what's the name? Both Nat Turner and Harriet Tubman is a part of American history, not just Black history. That just happens to be the few stories that they care to share with you, but it's a part of American history when you go look it up. Those two people are very influential, intricate parts of the American history, because slavery is such a big part of American history. Let's talk about Nat. So, again, remember I told you guys earlier about Nat. Nat he said he was getting visions from God, and that God was speaking to him. Now, Nat attempted to do his revolt twice. The second time is when he was in. The first time he got sick. He said the first eclipse was the right time to do it. That was a sign from God. Now, he set out to do it, but he got sick. And then later on, he ended up getting another sign, another form of something happening in the sky. So he said that was the right time to do it. Now, again, like I said, Nat gets a bad, rep. But again, he was trying to free his people the way that he knew. That was his approach.
Yeah, but
okay. Wait, let me finish, Timmy. Let me finish. But remember, that was his approach based upon the tyranny that was being, subjected to his people. So again, violence begets violence, and so that's what he did. He did what he was taught. They was killing them off. And let me be clear about this with you guys too. Not only Nat Turner, but in a couple of situations in that video, a couple of those slave revolts, those rebellions, they caught the so-called troublemakers, right? After a period of time, right? They trialed them, hung them, and in some cases, they chopped off their heads and posted them on pikes for everyone to see.
They had a picnic.
So now let me be clear about this too. But here's the other thing that took place. Following that, they too went on a killing spree, meaning the white slave owners and other people that felt like they needed to instill fear in the remaining slaves. So they went about killing people in a lot of those situations after they caught, trialed, and persecuted the troublemakers. So
that's called sending a message.
So again, this goes back to what I said to you earlier, where we would say that, okay, those people was behaving wrongly, but the whole system was wrong to begin with. So you got these individuals that say they did something wrong by trying to stage uprising, escaping. They wanted freedom. That was wrong of them to set out to get that, right? But does that mean that we're supposed to just disregard the evil that took place beforehand, during, and after that?
Nope.
I mean, now, someone speak on that.
What I was going to say, Nat, he didn't have a plan. Harriet had a plan. She did
have a plan.
She had a plan. Nah, he didn't have no plan. They said he didn't have a plan.
No, Nat's plan was he was supposed to get to a certain point where they had an armory,
No, y'all never seen the movie
a town
The Birth
armory.
of a Nation?
Yeah,
The Birth of a Nation is his biography.
But he never had a plan. He just went on, on the wing. Just let's go through this, and had no actual plan, no actual foundation.
He had a plan, but no, he didn't know if
his
the
foundation
slaves
was freedom.
He didn't know if the slaves was gonna listen to him.
That's what I'm saying. Now, Harriet, she had a plan. She had a whole layout. We're going to gather you people. We're going to meet at this certain spot, and the train is going to come, and y'all going to get on, and we're going to take certain amount of y'all at a certain time, because they can't really all play. Like you said, they had the seesaw cart, so only a few people can get on there.
Whoa. Let's be clear about this. The Underground Railroad was a metaphor. It wasn't an actual railroad.
That's nuts. See, look, this is why you guys got
this.
I don't know.
This was it. They called it an Underground Railroad because it made many stops. So I don't. There was not an actual train. It was the train was the people. That was the train. And they made a lot of stops along the way. So there wasn't an actual caboose and engine of sorts. The engine was the conductors, meaning Harriet and other sympathizers and empathizers. So again, so I have to disagree with you, Timmy, when you say that Nat didn't have a plan. I think that each one of those slave rebellion leaders, each of them had a plan. And man's best designed plans don't always map out to what you want them to be. See, there was other issues that prevented those plans from having the desired outcome. See, you had in some of those cases, you had fellow slaves that turned on them. That went to their oppressor and told them about the plans of rebellion. You had people that got scared and they turned back. You had situations where they was successful at a certain point. See, the cards were stacked against them because they didn't have the same resources, where the plantation owners were able to enlist militias, as they called them. But I just think that was just another group of white people that was pro-slavery. Those individuals, the polices and stuff like that, the armed forces. So they had, not only did they had themselves that was against it, they was able to enlist people that were guns, hired guns basically, to hunt down these rebellions and stuff like this. See, notice, you guys gotta remember this. To the victor goes the spoil. So I get to write the story how I see fit to write the story if I'm the victor. So I'm gonna tell the story where it benefits me. So I can label this any way I want. I can say, this was a savage rebellion. These slaves, how dare they try to rise up against their so-called oppressors? I can say that they was wrong for doing so because I owned them. But who are they to go against the person that owned them? But we got to remember, again, in each situation, these people wanted the same thing. Their foundation was freedom, their pursuit of freedom, because they felt and they knew, and so do we, present day, these people was being wrongly treated from day one. No one agrees to be enslaved. I don't think no one signs up, gets in the line, If they wrote, if they came on here right now and said, everyone who wants to be a slave, raise your hand. Ain't none of us gonna sign up for that. Nobody in their right mind. Nobody in their right mind. But go, Sean, how you feel about Nat Turner? I mean, what do you feel about? I don't know. Do you feel like that he should have had a better plan?
He was a religious man who had, to me, was the first Malcolm X. He believed that violence begets violence. That the only way that he could see that we was gonna be free is if we, meet violence with violence, however it had to be done by any means necessary, if you will. And that's how I looked at Nat Turner based off of what I've learned in my years of hearing his story and learning about his life.
Now, you guys gotta remember, Sean. You talked about something earlier, about this Spartacus and other biblical stories, and the Romans did certain things. All slaves,
revolted against the oppressor.
They that's right. They stage an uprising.
And that's the key thing about this guy, Nat Turner, because of the way that his story is portrayed. If you ever watch his movie, they had their own language, and then they had to learn English. And he was friends with the slave master's son. So the slave master's son started teaching him how to read science and math books.
Oh, let's be clear about this. They never said that Nat Turner was illiterate. They only said
no. I didn't say he was illiterate. I'm saying he was trying
an educated
to read
preacher,
science and math books, but the mother came and said, "Hey, he shouldn't be reading no book but this Bible." And once the slave master learned that he was reading the Bible, they started picking out key points of the Bible where it was okay to use slavery. So they had him preaching. They had him preaching on the slaves to be slaves. And what he did was start reading more into the Bible and reading the Spartacus and all that stuff.
Sounds like a smart individual.
So they can start. Yeah. So this is what I'm saying when I say he had a plan. He just didn't know if it was gonna work.
Well, I'll say this to you guys, right? Here's the thing about it too, right? In each of those situations, all those stories, any uprising, it has to come from something that happened beforehand. That's not like something an individual thought. That's not he just woke up one morning and said, I'm gonna stage a rebellion. He had to learn that this took place beforehand somewhere else.
Yeah, it was reading and understanding. Once he was because of the fact that they wanted him to read the Bible and to preach to the slaves to be slaves, he started reading deeper into the Bible and realizing that slaves was rebelling.
Hence the whole thing of them not wanting slaves to learn how to read and write. Because once you learn how to read and write, once you learn how to read what they're writing, then you learn more about not only your people, but their people. And you learn about history and things that occurred before your time. And then you, in turn, make history. See, but you know what they say about that, too. If you don't learn your history, you're doomed to repeat it. So again, I would say this. Let's fast forward to present day. Enough about Harriet and Nat and others. Because from Harriet Tubman and Nat Turner, we got all the modern day Black activists. Some people will call the Black Panthers a rebellion, a Black rebellion. Some people call the Black Lives Matters movement a Black rebellion. You see what I'm saying? History is repeating itself. You know why? Because something was not learned. The people did not learn what was needed to learn. So in each situation, what I would say, Go ahead, Tanya.
History is repeating itself because the people who enslaved the people didn't learn from their mistakes.
Preach, my sister,
and that's
preach.
why they trying to abolish history in these schools. Don't want
That's right.
Trying to ban the books and things that teach you about history.
That's right. That's because
they want it to repeat itself.
That makes the next generation easily influenced. You see what I'm saying? That next generation, the generation under us is supposed to be the generation that inherits the world, the earth, so to speak, right? So if these are the ones that are going to lead us when we in our glory days, when we in our golden years, if we create a nation, a generation of selfish individuals, they don't care nothing about what came before them, then all they're going to think about is them. They ain't going to care about you. They ain't care nothing about your suffering. They ain't going to care nothing about the suffering of your ancestors and their ancestors. See, the biggest thing that America and the world over is failing to see the writing on the wall. See, they predict this race war, but I think it's going to be greater than that. I think the thing that's going to befall our universe is a generational war. I think it's going to turn to a situation where it's going to be the old versus the young. I think that's where we're headed. Because again,
well, if you pay attention to America, that is what America is. You know how long it takes you to be a politician in the House of Representatives? You gotta be old.
Well, one thing you have to do is be willing to go along with the old ways. But again, staying true to form, this is Black History Month. Again, all of those so-called rebels, those rebellions, was because they was in pursuit of freedom. And again, in some circles, they say, give me liberty or give me death. What's happening in the world currently around you? What do you hear more about in the news? Do you today? Do you hear more about people being liberated or people dying?
People dying.
That's all we hear on the news. What do we hear about? How many stories do we hear about people of color that feel good stories on the news as of late? I'll wait. Yeah, no one's talking?
Yeah,
because I don't think
nationally,
you
you don't.
anything.
You don't, right? What's some of the things we've been talking about before Black History Month even came about this year? We've been talking about all these killings of people of color, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We've been talking about killing of Black women, Black men. That's all we've been talking about, right? Because that's what's been taking place. We just recently talked about, here we go again, the modern day overseers, the police misbehaving with those 5 Memphis Black cops. So I would say those was 5 Black overseers.
Mm-hmm.
Did enacted the very treatment that we accused the oppressors of old of doing. And then you went out and did the same thing current day. I mean, if I'm wrong, someone tell me I'm wrong.
Nope, you're not wrong.
So again,
they're blue lives. They're not even Black. They ride around with their own plate that says Blue Lives Matter on it and stuff.
But see, it's the division. It's the division. It's the same thing that was going on back then. See, if you don't value life to begin with, how can you value anybody else's life? If you perceive people as product at one time, you felt there was livestock, Again, and that's why I don't put too much value on our life. We priceless. We not for sale. But when you first came to these lands, what's the first thing they did to you? Put you on the auction block. See what I'm saying? If you don't know your history, you doomed to repeat it. All this whitewashing of Black history, it doesn't matter how many days that we have in the month to celebrate it, because to be honest with you guys, just like what I said about Valentine's Day, it does not require a calendar date for you to celebrate someone. Black history is supposedly our history. So if you are a person of color, you should be a scholar. You should be a teacher. You should be the one teaching not only the people in your circle, but the generations to come about your history. And your history is not made up of things that you read in the school books. Because you know our history extends beyond that, not just American history, not just what they tell you about Black history. Right now,
and I would listen, Uncle D. I wasn't trying to make anybody steer anybody in the wrong direction or say that I don't believe in Harriet Tubman. It's just to open your mind up to the different. Because if you look into that stuff, you start to realize that there were a lot more things going on than just slavery. And
no, you don't.
They want us to believe that we came from Africa.
See, you don't have to apologize.
People was already here.
You never apologize for that, because see, the thing is, right? They put it out there because it's for public consumption. So again, they put all these other things, precursors in advance, so that you would start to question what you're reading. But again, I just say to everybody, pay attention to what happened beforehand and what's currently happening. Because this ain't nothing new. This is something what they've been doing. They just shined it up and represented it.
They're just trying to get more clever about it and try to disguise it better.
I don't even know if I can say that, big bro. I don't even know if they're being more clever about it. I feel like they're being more blatant about it. I feel like
and that's exactly what it is. Just exactly what it is.
Well, yes, because you had a president that exposed that, and now everybody wants to use his damn his format that he laid out.
Let me say this to you, Timmy.
It's not even using his format.
Well, the people that was
always
wait, one at a time.
You're right, son. You're right too. It ain't his format. It's their format, and he was just bold enough to say it and go all out there with it. You know,
they needed a Pied Piper. He was him.
Exactly.
And now he opened up that door for them to be able to be okay. I don't have to be in the closet anymore.
Exactly.
I'll ask y'all this question before we go. So since we brought it to current day, and we talking about, of course, we're referring to the Donald. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you think that he's the puppet or the puppet master?
Neither.
Okay.
Well, he think he is the puppet master. He think he can pull string, but as he found out, he has no strings to pull because the puppets done took control of their own strings.
Well,
strung him up, and they got him dancing and carrying on uncontrollably.
Okay. Well, let me say this to you, and then I'm going to end the show definitely. The greatest thing the devil ever did was try to convince the world that he did not exist. Think about that. Think about that. This has been the Still a Man podcast. We'll see you guys next week.
Salute.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
All right. Good night.